Hello and welcome to the Clean Call for Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. I'm Katie Boyd, the Clean Program Manager, and otherwise work at Series Education and Outreach. And I've asked folks, we're kind of small, so but I think it'd still be good to save a little time to introduce yourself in the chat since we want to get into our presentation today. And then does anyone have any announcements that they'd like to put out there? Got a couple more folks in the room. So just so you know, Cheney and Tiffany, we're introducing ourselves in the chat and I'm just asking for announcements. Jim, did you have an announcement? James
Sure.
Callahan, nice to see you.
Katie, it's so beautiful to see you. We'll have to hear about family and things too, but that's another time. More like an update, the students in DC and Maryland are, we want evidence that they're being taken seriously at the national and the local level. They made recommendations to the Smithsonian Natural History Museum on energy efficiency. They did 2 weeks later, they had changed every light that the students had asked for and are asking for energy survey of the entire museum. They have found what they can show to be tremendously invaluable, and that they know not only about energy efficiency, but color quality. They can make fantastic recommendations. The students have been offered not only internships at the National Gallery of Art and the Library of Congress in art, but in combination with being climate action leaders, because they can help those facilities become energy efficient as well. So I think that's an example of what students can do when they set their mind to taking action on climate change. Lastly, the news is coming back now to the Bay Area in San Francisco. On Saturday, there's at the Giants ballpark, there's a major STEM festival. In Fremont, there's one on Saturday, then followed by one on the East Bay the next week. The science big events are back, and we're going to see how we can be ready for COVID on that, but big events are back, so good. Thank you for your time on that, listening.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, excited to see some of these festivals happening again, hopefully safely, and figuring out how to do that safely in this new world. Great. Any other announcements? I have one, I'll jump in. The Clean Group is putting on some special webinars, part of our extended series here around Earth Day, for professional development webinars for teachers, especially, but really anyone can join, especially the one today I'm super excited about on climate and mental health. And so please join us. I think that'll be a really nice one. And then we have a couple more the next couple weeks as well. So check those out on that website I just put into the chat. And I'll just give one more minute to see if anybody else has any other announcements. My teacher pause here, and if not, we'll go into our presentation for today.
I'll give a quick request and plug for the climate action teams that I'm putting together. We're meeting once a month. The first one is April 27th. I've talked to a little bit about Tiffany with this, but the idea is to have an intergenerational group of retired educators, experts, students around certain topics related to climate change. I'll put this link, or I'll put a link to this flyer in the chat. But basically, if you know either adults, like educators or experts, they can apply here. If you know students who are really excited and want to do kind of more work and collaborate with other kids throughout the country, they can apply here. It's a pretty simple Google form. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Janie. Yeah, I was looking at that when you put it up last week, and it looks like a really neat opportunity. So great. I'll ask one more time. Any other announcements?
I'll make one really quick. So we had a bunch of students before the Marshall Fire that were advocating for the IECC 2021 building codes, and our community passed them. And then we had a large outcry of people who lost their homes in the fire, asking the city council to rescind on the codes. So what they did is they kept the codes, but they made it optional for fire victims. But the recent news that's so great is that now the whole community is talking about energy efficiency and building codes. And one of our big builders that is going to build back a number of couple hundred of the homes that were burned has just agreed to do the 2021 IECC building codes because of the students' work with the city council. So
That's great news, Tiffany. Yay. I was actually curious about that because, yeah, I heard about that and it's like, yeah, you don't want to make people, have to spend a lot more to rebuild their homes. But also we don't want to go backwards when they implemented these great, more sustainable building codes. So wonderful. Well, if you have any other announcements, you can put them in the chat. And I think we should move to our presentation for today. So thanks to Emily Pataglia and Laura Baker. And sorry if I mispronounce either of your names. You can correct me when you start. From Presidio Graduate School's Climate Education for All program. They're going to talk to us today about their K-12 free climate education courses. And they, yeah, I think through this presentation, we're going to learn a lot about them. So I'll let them take it over from here versus trying to just read the abstract and bio. But if you want to read the abstract and bio they put out there for everybody, that is on the Clean Teleconference page as well. So Laura and Emily, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Katie. We are just absolutely honored to be here today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. If you would do review our bios. We did not plan on introducing ourselves because we wrote those bios, but I'm Emily Battaglia. This is Laura Baker. We are so, again, pleased to be talking to you today about the Climate Change Education for All program at Presidio Graduate School. So first, a little bit about us. We are the first and only independent graduate school focused entirely on sustainability and social justice. And so with every piece of curriculum, every program, every course, those themes are woven into and fundamental to the conversations we're having in our classrooms and in our events and in our community. And it's not just an add-on, it really is who we are. And so every day, our students, alumni, and faculty reimagine and rebuild a more just and sustainable planet for all. And that really is our focus. It's our mission, and it's the impact that we want to make on the world. And so in 2020, in doing our due diligence in researching new programs, identifying needs, understanding the market, we came across a lot of data and interesting information about a gap in teacher preparedness to teach climate literacy. And given that we had been doing this, having these conversations, we already had community around this and contacts, we thought, you know what, we can help with this. And so we launched the Climate Education for All program with the mission of providing all teachers with the climate literacy skills and tools they need to educate the next generation on climate change, science, causes, and solutions. And so one of the more interesting pieces of data that we came across was an academic study. It's a Brookings Institute, the community shared third-party research that indicated that a 19 gigaton reduction in carbon dioxide was achievable by 2050 if just 16% of high school students in advanced nations received adequate climate change education. And so we thought, well, there's our impact right there. We just have to get students to be climate literate. Well, how do you get students climate literate? You need to make sure that the teachers are prepared. So it's not that teachers don't want to teach climate change. 86% of teachers do want to teach it. We know that students want to learn it. We know that parents want their students to learn it. There's data around all of that. But unfortunately, only 42% of those teachers teach climate change. And so what are the barriers? So we did a lot of analysis. We talked to a lot of people. We had an advisory panel. Amy Frame was on there. Thank you, Amy, for your amazing work with us 2 years ago. And we were able to identify the needs in the market at that time. Of course, the world has changed so much since then, but some fundamentals are still very true. So the first barrier that we wanted to address was that teachers really don't believe that it's related to their subject area. Science teachers believe it because there's often standards around climate change, but it's sort of stuck there at the end of the year sometimes. There are, states moving forward with incorporating climate change standards now, and that's wonderful. But it's not universally accepted as something relevant. And so as a solution to that, one of our fundamental tenets of the program is that climate change education should not be taught in isolation, that teachers really need help connecting and integrating authentically to standards and other initiatives. And so that's one of the tenets of our course, based off of that need and that barrier. Another one is that teachers don't have enough training or support. They need to teach climate change. There is some PL out there, maybe not enough, maybe not universally accessible, and kind of depends on district or state availability. There's a lot of initiatives trying to get that PL out there, and we're part of that conversation and hope to be even more so. There are a lot of resources out there. There are so many, but teachers really need to feel competent and confident in incorporating those resources into their classroom. And so that is another fundamental of our course. Another aspect that is kind of get a little sticky is that even science teachers, but certainly most teachers, really don't know the fundamentals of climate change science. We're finding in our conversations with our teachers that some don't know the difference between climate and weather, climate change and global warming, or aren't able to articulate that in a way that makes sense to their students. And so reviewing fundamentals, introducing great resources in supporting teachers on climate change fundamentals is really essential, and another tenet of our course. Also, and finally, especially our elementary school teachers, we're hearing again and again that a barrier to teaching climate change is connecting climate change with hope rather than trauma. It can be so traumatic for students to learn about climate change. And so another tenet of our course is to make sure that there's SEL sort of incorporated throughout the courses. And the course does really connect climate change to hopeful, solution-oriented messaging. And so that's what we have learned. But what we'd like to do now is just in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, we're doing some information gathering. Our programs are constantly growing and evolving. And so we'd love to hear from this group. If you'd share in the chat, but also if you want to speak up, that would be so great. What do you see as the greatest challenge teachers are facing in teaching climate change right now? I'll take a look at chat. Confidence. Absolutely, Wendy. Great point. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Hi, I'm here. It sounds like we're in the business of doing the same things. We want to prepare teachers to be confident and prepared to tackle these subjects so that when all the other potential barriers to successfully addressing these topics in the classroom, because students have questions and students are demanding information, right? And so the teachers have to be ready and prepared themselves. And we see it in all of our courses, and that's why we're doing what we do. And it sounds like that's exactly the motivation behind your work. And that's great because we know it takes a village. There's a lot of people out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And yeah, it's the confidence and the competence and just being able to sort of have that roll off your tongue, right? Be able to speak intelligently about climate change. Not necessarily that you have to be the expert, but you need to be able to, as I think, Cheney, you're saying, there's so many resources, how to identify valid and quality resources. We have librarians taking our course because they're interested in, which ones are valid, who do we trust? Like, there's so much out there, there's so much noise. How do we identify our fundamental resources, quality resources that we can trust, especially given that it can be quite a political issue sometimes, right? What else? Laura, are you seeing any others that you want to teacher bandwidth? So interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, Tiffany. Especially in these last 2 years, we offer the resources. These courses are free to teachers. They also can pay for grad credit if they want. but they don't have the bandwidth to do anything beyond, especially in these last 2 years, what has been, their required professional learning opportunities. And so what we can do though in what we try and do in our courses is identify opportunities that are seamless, that are just, you're already teaching the standard, just teach it with a climate change context. And so it doesn't end up being a lot of additional work, but it takes a bit to get there, and it takes some coaching for sure. Anything else? Anyone else want to share theirs? There's so many good ones in here. Hi, Frank. Nice to see you. He was on our advisory panel too.
Hey, Emily. Sorry for being late. My last meeting just didn't stop.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a question? Just, maybe it's already been said, but the greatest challenge teachers face in teaching climate change? Inertia.
Inertia. What do you mean by that, Frank?
So how it's always been taught, it feels like it always is. The fact that we're struggling to get earth science as a high school subject, which is where most of the climate change content sits. And, the professional development, the certifications, the degrees, all the systems that are who the teachers are today just perpetuates teaching what you're comfortable with, teaching what you know, teaching what you used to teach. Feels like the biggest challenge we face in this work, because it's like, well, let me just fit that in. And we all know fitting it in is not a recipe for it actually happening.
Yeah, I like that language. I like how you framed that. It's not fitting it in. It's sort of organically incorporating it as a natural part of the conversation. It is in our news. It is in our world. There's studies. There's all kinds of ways of incorporating this content, and it's not an add-on. It's just, it should be part of how we think to frame curriculum naturally, right? Great point. All right, well, thank you for that. I'm gonna take down everything that is in chat, because like I said, we're always learning and improving. So I appreciate everyone sharing your ideas, and please continue to do so as I turn it over to Laura.
Hi, everyone. Great start. So thinking about the barriers and some of the things that you already put in the chat, I saw a lot of comments about resources, and it's incredible that there's an overabundance of resources, but teachers don't know what to do with all those resources. And if they don't have the confidence and the confidence to implement those resources and actually use them in classrooms so they don't feel piecemeal, then they're not going to. And so thinking about the barriers and where teachers are, these professional development or professional learning opportunities are really designed to meet teachers where they are. So Presidio started first with the foundational course, the 9-week Teaching Climate Change Essentials course. And then over time has added some shorter courses based on teacher feedback around time and also around area of interest. And what's really amazing is, because of really generous funding, all of these professional learning opportunities are free to teachers unless they want, graduate credit. So that's really wonderful for teachers. And so we want to share just briefly about these 3 courses, so you have a little bit of understanding kind of about the content and how they were designed. And then we can certainly answer some questions at the end. Next slide. So first, thinking about the foundational course. This is the 9-week course. It's asynchronous for the most part. Teachers cover 1 module per week, self-study. But there are 3 live webinars over the course of the week, and those really allow the participants to engage with subject matter experts, collaborate, ask questions. They're very need-based webinars. The other thing I think that's important to know about this course and all courses is the facilitators actually review tasks, review postings, review the project lesson plans. and give the participants, give the teachers one-on-one feedback and help provide additional outside support. So while the course helps kind of direct teachers to resources to help build their own competency, the other thing that facilitators do is, as they're reviewing tasks, if they see that there are needed additional resources outside of what's already provided in the course, they'll go and pull those and provide additional support outside of what's in the course. So it's pretty phenomenal how much one-on-one attention these participants get, even though it's mostly an asynchronous course. Next slide. So thinking about the barriers, it's one really fundamental piece that Emily mentioned, but I want to reiterate, is that Presidio really believes, and it feels like all of you believe the same thing, is that teaching climate change is not just the job of science teachers. It's K12, all subject and grade levels. And so these courses are really built around that. And they're built around helping from module number 1 throughout to the end, helping teachers think about their context, their students, what they need. So based on what I'm teaching this year, where can I authentically integrate what I'm learning in this course and what resources I have into lessons that already exist, standards that I know that I already teach? How can I do that in an authentic way that meets my students' needs? And so that's really fundamental to the entire 9-week course. And that's really where teachers get to apply and collaborate and test out and get facilitator feedback. Next slide. The course also particularly focuses on, as many of you have mentioned in the chat, teacher mindset. So not only is it content driven, but how do I think about my own mindsets and my own beliefs about climate? How do I feel comfortable counteracting and balancing maybe some of the pushback that I might get from parents or students or even my colleagues? So there's a lot of support for teachers. And I think this goes to some of the original comments in the chat around confidence, right? Confidence in what they're teaching, confidence in that it's important and that it fits with, based on what I'm teaching, my subject, my grade level, and what students need. Next course, or next slide. So when Presidio was designing this course and all courses, Presidio understood that course design was equally important as course content. Those two things go hand in hand. And so the entire course is designed with adult learners in mind. It values teacher experience, teacher knowledge, where they are, no matter where they are with their climate literacy and confidence and competence and all of those pieces. So it really honors and values their experience. It allows teacher choice and differentiation within the course based on what their students need and where they are as a learner. And there's a lot of teacher collaboration and opportunities to learn from one another, not only the facilitators and the webinar leaders, but learn from their peers within the course. Next slide. So here's an example of one of the modules. And so all of the modules are designed the same way. There's a learn section. They're able to apply what they learn and try out what they learn and get feedback on what they're learning. They collaborate with their peers and their facilitators, and then they're able to reflect and think about what they've learned and where they need to go from there. And so within these modules, they have choice, they're able to differentiate, And it really follows that UDL, the Universal Design for Learning Equity Framework, when we think about how we design courses. I'll give you a moment to kind of glance over that. Next slide. And within each module, teachers have opportunities to post where they are in the process. And it's always around taking what they've learned and how am I going to think about that and integrate it immediately and apply it in my classroom based on the lessons that I'm going to teach. So you can see some snippets here of some initial brainstorming after some initial early learning. Based on what I've learned, how am I thinking about applying this into my classroom? So I'll give you a moment to kind of glance through some of those. Next slide. And so now that you have a little bit of an understanding of what the course design is like, we want to just share a little bit about some of the learning objectives and some of the content. So you can see here for this 9-week course, what the learning objectives are, really focuses on building climate literacy, helping teachers and students think about how climate change impacts the planet and people, and particularly historically underserved communities. Integration into existing standards, curriculum, resources, what's already happening in their schools and communities and classroom. And then always it's solutions-based and really positively framed around action and solutions. Next slide. And I'll give you a moment just to kind of run your eyes over the syllabus. Next slide. So the next few slides, because I know you have access to these, share some information about some of the facilitators and webinar leaders. You know, the who is leading is just as important as the design and the content of the course, because they really, even though the course is built, they really tailor the course and provide additional support based on the participants in the course. So I'll give you a moment just to kind of peruse through some of the folks who have been facilitators in the past and webinar leaders. The other thing, especially for the synchronous webinar leaders, those folks are flexible and the topics of the webinars change depending on kind of who the participants are and the interests of the group.
Before we move on, Frank, I think you have a question.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, if we could go back 2 slides to the boxes, that one. In the climate change solutions, one of the things that's been emerging over the last period of time is that when we talk about solutions, it's not just like, you know, you have wind power and renewable and charging and, you know, all green concrete and green steel, but it's actually what communities are doing to implement climate solutions. And one of the kind of things that's shown up for the past few years is actually looking at your community's plans and actions as part of climate change solutions, because it signals that you are seeing collective action and you're evaluating, contributing to, accelerating, supporting collective action as opposed to feeling like you have to do it all yourself, which is totally not workable. Is that when it says climate change solutions, is that part of that?
Absolutely, Frank, and that's a great question. There's one activity in this course around CO2 emissions, and they kind of take a look at the data around, so if you make certain changes, what does that do? If as a class, we make certain changes, what does that do as a community? So then they begin to understand that together we can make a bigger impact. So yeah, that's right on. And Emily, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there.
Yeah, two comments, and thanks for bringing that up, Frank, because it gives us an opportunity to talk about more about something that's so important in the course, and that is place-based education, right? So constantly we're asking our teachers to make relevance, sense making of what's relevant to their students and their location. And so, for example, right now we're piloting our new teaching climate justice course with Sausalito, California. And in that section, there are webinars. There's a webinar where the mayor of Sausalito comes and talks to the teachers that are in that about sort of community action and environmental changes that affect like specific areas of Sausalito that the teachers are experiencing and know about and can bring right into their classroom. Now that's a specific sort of one-off permutation. It's a private cohort, but in general in the course, especially in the Teaching Climate Justice course, there's a whole module dedicated to community action, finding who's doing the work in your community, how to connect to them, and how to incorporate that into your classroom. And so we asked teachers to do a little research, but as Laura said at the top of her part of the presentation, the facilitator helps identify and find those as well. So that's one of the benefits of having the facilitator, smaller cohorts, is that you really can help teachers identify their local resources and have it be a little bit more authentic. So yes, but we can always do more, Frank.
Great. So Emily, next slide, if you can flip to the participant feedback. Great. So far we've run a handful of these courses, and teachers have, been overwhelmingly positive. I think where Presidio is trying to focus, and this is the whole crux of providing professional learning, is the so what. So what's the impact? The teacher feedback and the course participation and all of that has been really positive. But then we're trying to think about, so what does that mean in classrooms, and how are teachers implementing, and what does that implementation look like over the course of the year? So those are some things that we're thinking about how to measure and following up with teachers. But you can see on this slide, and then Emily, if you want to flip to the next one so they can see some of the comments, teachers are feeling, to some of the beginning comments in the chat, a lot more confident after this course, and are feeling confident enough to test things out in the classroom and to share some of the resources and begin to integrate into what they're teaching. You want to flip to one more slide. And then one more. So we have 3 dates. Teachers have given us a lot of feedback that because this is a 9-week course, they want to be able to tackle this, after testing, the testing demands, all of those kinds of things, so they can really think about what this looks like over the course of the summer as they're planning for the school year, so they can integrate throughout the school year. So we have a course starting in May and then also in early June. So I want to turn it over to Emily. She's going to touch briefly on 2 of the short courses, and then we'd love to open it up to insights and questions.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm excited to speak about our 2 short courses. As Laura mentioned, our sort of Cadillac version of Teaching Climate Change is that Teaching Climate Change Essentials course that does incorporate lots of themes that you'll identify in the Extreme Weather course and the Teaching Climate Justice course. So that's sort of the gold standard 9-week course. But as we have been growing and identifying true teacher needs, and as teacher needs have evolved in the last 2 years, we have identified an opportunity to have shorter courses and to have more specific courses to specific subjects. So we're still designing our roadmap. We're looking at, state-based education, that kind of thing. But one of the early things that we identified was that science teachers really wanted something directly aligned to NGSS and their local science standards that talk specifically about something that was often in their curriculum already. And so we thought, okay, that's a proof point. Let's initiate that. And what we find is the science teachers are really enjoying the course, and they need these fundamental review of what extreme weather is, how climate change and extreme weather events are related, and and again, we're sense making, we're doing place-based education, we're trying to get them to make it relevant for their students, and so they explore what extreme weather events occur in their region or regions like theirs. And then they design a series of lessons or a lesson that includes extreme weather events that are, again, are NGSS and state standards aligned. The course is 4 weeks. It's about 15 hours. Some spend longer, but it's designed around about 15 hours of work. And there are 4 learning modules, 1 per week. So as opposed to the 9-week, 9 modules. They do have access to the Teaching Climate Change Essentials webinars. They can choose to do that, but those are really designed around the TCCE course and not the extreme weather course. We're still finding that the teachers from extreme weather are really enjoying the webinars, but it's not part of their grade. Again, these courses are all facilitated, peer-to-peer collaboration. We do limit the cohorts so that there's enough people to have a great collaboration experience, but not enough to where you're going to get lost and to where you're not going to get that one-on-one experience. So we'd like to cap it around 35. And there's a comprehensive syllabus I'll show you in a second. And again, same as the TCCE course. And when I say TCCE, I mean Teaching Climate Change Essentials. That's there's readings and videos and highly vetted, high quality resources that can be used with their students. So I'll give you a minute to look at this, but it follows the program learning objectives that I just shared. And so we talk about the fundamentals of what climate change is, what global warming is, and then we connect climate change and extreme weather and the causes of human behavior versus things that are just sort of more natural in climate change. So teachers are prepared not to say, oh, that's a hurricane, that's climate change. They have a true connection to how that is an example of climate change. And then again, we tie it to local extreme weather. And then we're always solutions based. So module 4 is focused on speaking through the solutions with the students. Here is an example of a teacher happy with the course. Give you a minute to read that. And our next upcoming course, we're running one right now, but it started last week, so we can't have any more enrollments on that one, but we're starting one on June 13th, and there will be more. Our fiscal year ends at June 30th, but we're scheduling for the summer and the fall now, so we'll be announcing new dates soon. But if you know anyone who's interested in extreme weather, like I said, it's mostly based it's for science teachers, but we've had non-science teachers take the course and still really get a lot out of it. The final course I want to talk about is our newest course. Our first public cohort started yesterday. It's going really well. We've got really experienced facilitators that are very knowledgeable and leaders in the climate justice field. Or one of the facilitators is a leader, and then the other one is just a very experienced online education facilitator. And it's going really well so far. We've got a ton of engagement. We've got a great group of people. And we're excited for learnings from this session, what we can do better, what works, where we need to add more information, that kind of thing. So it's new. And again, we talk about the fundamentals of weather and climate change and the impact of global warming. We talk about the history of environmental and climate justice movements in Module 2. And then we analyze the implications of climate change and its disproportionate effect on marginalized communities in Mod 3. And then we get into, Frank, that's the example that I was trying to give earlier of this is where we connect to our local community, organizations, and just finding out who's doing what and how to get students out into their environment. Oops, sorry about that, if you can see that. And so this group also has access to our webinars that we're giving. We're looking into adding in the future, after we've run it a couple times, adding climate justice specific webinars, because there's so many resources out there that we'd love to highlight and talk about. And so that could be how the course evolves soon. And again, all the same resources and structure as the previous courses that we talked about. And here's that syllabus that I just sort of reviewed with you when I talked about the program learning outcomes. So fundamentals, that's not right. Okay, the next 2 dates, we started one yesterday. If you know anyone that wants to take it right now, we could get them in. So just contact me, and there's a little bit of room still in that session. But the June 20th session is our next session that is scheduled that people can sign up for. And again, we're scheduling into the fall right now, but we don't have those official dates public. If you'd like to contact us, you can check out our website and fill out a contact us form, or you can email us at k12team@presidio.edu. And I will close it with, again, a little bit of time to talk about what are you seeing in the field? What else should we know? How do you see us continuing to make positive change in ensuring that teachers are effectively supported in incorporating climate change into their classroom? So I'll just open it up. Jim or James, I see you have your hand up. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You all are clearly doing very important work, and you come from an institution that does important work. So it's really great to have you in the community doing what you do.
Thank you.
A little bit of trying to maybe in framing and talking to teachers and knowing what different programs are best suited for whom and who to recommend. As you probably know, in the call, there are people who are doing various different work. And maybe if I can ask a question that is kind of using an analogy of like a biome, or what's the fauna that you fit into. If I look at Cheney, for instance, Cheney puts a lot of attention into making sure that we don't just have clovers and flowers and general, everywhere there's growth going on around climate change in education, but we have redwoods and oaks. We have some leaders, we have teachers, we have schools that are really doing outstanding work. It could be an inspiration to all and show it's possible. Tiffany, I think, does the same. Eric, I think Carrie would too. How do you see that about you're looking to have a general, climate literacy and so on? How about how do you treat or are you looking to have certain leaders, so places that are absolutely outstanding, that are like national leaders, that wow, that's a school that has gone way beyond just 4 hours of teaching or something along that line? And quickly, just maybe within that too, is it right to say geographically you're taking in teachers from all across the country because it's not location specific or state location specific?
Or country specific. Yeah, great question, James. I'll answer the second question first. We have international students. Like I mentioned, we have librarians. We have special ed teachers. We've got all kinds of different people that are involved in education throughout the nation. In Canada, we have one from Indonesia that just started. And then a student from India. I know because we had to do a little special sign up situation for them. So it is broadly appealing. And we can make it relevant to anyone. I mean, everyone is experiencing climate change. The standards conversation is different for every teacher. And so it's still different for if it's a different country. We still need them to research and understand their standards and understand how they can make it relevant within their classroom or their library. And so that work is done largely in the class with the facilitator and in collaborating with others. As far as the conversation ecosystem goes, we are still emerging in that conversation. We've formed some really powerful partnerships with people that are just on our, we know that, you know, they're on our side and they feel that what we're doing is good work and that we can support them. Like Subject to Climate has been our partner for a really long time. But we're now part of conversations that are helping states become more supportive of professional learning. Like we're in deep conversations with New Jersey, for example, in making sure that they have the support they need in order to incorporate their new climate standards. We're trying to be part of the conversation of the 10 Strands Initiative. We're going district to district in Washington. Laura, do you want to talk a little bit more about our outreach efforts and the strategy behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jim, a couple of things, and I've seen some of these, or James, sorry, some of the comments in the chat. Number one, teachers don't necessarily feel supported. So one of the goals of this program is to allow all teachers, no matter where they are. We have teachers from Oklahoma, Texas, Montana. Those states aren't providing a lot of resources. Their standards certainly don't go above and beyond around climate change. They're not getting professional learning opportunities. So we wanted to provide access to every and all. On top of that, what obviously is the next step and what Presidio is realizing is that, and I see a comment in here, it looks like, James, you wrote this comment around lack of support. So what they're not getting, even after the professional development, is they're not going back to necessarily always a school that is also on board. So we're trying to have conversations with either individual schools or districts or partners that can help their instructional coaches be able to follow up, and in team meetings for them to think about how to lesson plan and integrate within. So Presidio is very, very new in this game, and we have a lot to learn from folks like Cheney and other organizations that are already farther along. But I would say, number one, providing access to all. So you know, teachers feel supported, and then, you know, kind of going from there. I don't know if that completely answers your questions, but we're very, very new in this process. Cheney, did you want to kind of add in? I'd love to hear from you. I don't know if you have a question or a comment.
No, it's two questions. I mean, you've already nodded at this a little bit, but I was wondering how you're thinking about, like, once teachers go through your professional development, which sounds really amazing. I would like to take it. How are you thinking about, like, either continuing like community or support after they leave you? Yeah, so that's my first big question.
Yeah, so yeah, great. So, like, for example, we have a teacher that took the course in Princeton, New Jersey. She's from an independent school. She thought the course was amazing. She started to bring the information then to her grade level planning, and okay, everyone, we need to all do this together, started sharing information, and then brought the information to her principal. So, like, I would say it's very organic, and obviously Presidio needs to be more strategic around that. But I think, you know, just being super new to the game and very early in the process, but that's where it needs to head, right? That's where you're going to see real change and real support. And then that teacher actually became, and I don't know her exact title, but like the environmental literacy leader for the school. That the course kind of, she already obviously had, you know, the desire and the want to, but the course kind of helped kind of spur all of that on and get her really excited about change that can happen. So I would say right now, Presidio is kind of at the point of organic and working on strategy to do more.
And
Makes
as our
sense.
alumni network grows, we're going to be able to create more movement around social media, but we're trying very hard to build our social media brand so we can provide that support on our Facebook page and through Twitter chats and things like that. But because we're so new, we only have 170 something alum as of right now. And so we have an alumni newsletter. The facilitators are still engaged with a lot of the alum, but as far as like a spaced repetition type of class support, it's on the roadmap. We would love to be able to do that in the future, but we're growing and new. So,
And then Cheney, yeah.
Smaller question. When you're talking about solutions, especially around extreme weather, are you also, I've been grappling with this. Are you focusing also on adaptation as well as mitigation, or is it mainly around mitigation and advancing climate justice?
The extreme weather course is focused on I always get it wrong. Anthropogenic, is that, I don't know what it's the human causes. And so
Yes.
understanding human cause, it's really focused on human causes and then solutions around that. So it is a mitigation conversation as well, but it's definitely like, it's more about understanding how this is happening and what to attribute, like attribution science. I don't facilitate the course, but it's but it's like truly understanding and not just saying like blanket statement, this is what's causing extreme weather. It's, we know that this data is tied to climate change. This is worse. Therefore, here's some solutions or and actions around that. So
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And Frank, you had a question or a comment.
So just a quick follow up on Channing, your last question. That's not my question. When I talk with the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit team, what they say is resilience is not a solution. Solution is dealing with the root cause of the problem, which is carbon emissions and deforestation, right? That's the solution. Anything you do to lessen the impact isn't really a solution. It's lessening the impact action. Now that's one perspective. You could say adaptation and resilience and drawing down carbon are the three solutions. Those are, you can quibble on the second one, but so the real solutions are cutting the emissions from going up in the first place and drawing down carbon that's already been emitted into the atmosphere back down out of the atmosphere. So those are definitely solutions. And then the third one is of different people have different minds on it. So that's just one perspective, but that's not the question.
I would like to maybe talk about that at a clean network.
Yeah, let's do it.
It feels like a good right conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot, Cheney, right? Like how do you position this well is important.
Yeah.
But my question is actually, I think Emily and Laura, is that one of the big challenges we have for any professional development activity that anybody's doing is the marketing. Is getting teachers. Teachers are a hard market. We are naturally resistant to marketing. It's not even, but I think one of the ideas we've been talking about in the community is that, like, if all of us can help fill everyone's seats, like if your class can hold 1,000 people and you've got 200, the community should be trying to figure out where those 800 could be. Cheney, if you've got 50 seats in 100, we should help you get that last 50. Like, fill everything that is. And Amy, I'm sorry, not Amy. Well, Amy, but I was thinking Wendy. Same thing was true with AMS education, professional development. Let's fill everybody's current offerings before we start trying to build new ones at some level, right? So I think, but we don't have a strategy yet. I did put a link to a new thing that we put on the Clean website about events. And the intent there is to try and support more community climate professional development offerings. I don't know exactly how we would put something like yours in there, but I think, that's just the beginning. But I think as a community, we all have to help each other fill every offering as much as possible.
And we love those partnerships. If anyone has anything they ever want to promote through our newsletter, we have a pretty good friends and family network going right now. Plus we have our alumni newsletter. So if you ever have something, just email me, Laura, anybody on our team, and we're so happy to promote. And likewise, if there's ever an opportunity for us to post somewhere on some website or something, we're happy to provide that content. So thank you for bringing that up, Frank. And absolutely, we're so happy to be part of this conversation and to be part of the solution. And we need to all do it together. Eric, I think we're almost out of time, but I'd love to hear your question.
Yeah, and it might be something for future conversation too. And I think it ties to a lot of things going on in California now with the 10 strands opportunity. But, we did some work maybe 15 years ago at really building out a curriculum that could be integrated. So I really appreciated that approach that you're taking with respect to how to make it seamless, because that really was what we found too, is the time. They're under all these constraints. Science gets the back burner. Certainly climate change would get the further back burner.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about the trends that you're seeing in terms of, one, the teachers that are enrolling. I know it's not place-based, which is awesome. So people can come in from other states that don't have resources that California has. But curious about like the percentage of folks that are coming from California. And then of that, is it curriculum like, are they asking for things that tie to FOSS? Are they asking for things that tie to Amplify? Are they, are you seeing some trends or some, because NGSS certainly it so much ties there. And so that's been a real kind of golden nugget in the last 10 or 15 years that exists for California and for the states that have adopted it. But sort of on the ground, other curriculum, because that really does seem to be a constraint, is one, like my wife teaches kindergarten at a school in Oakland, and they get these rollouts by trimester. So she might be teaching life science one trimester, but then the other kindergarten school, are teaching it in a different one. So the timing, and I imagine, sorry, there's a lot of commentary in here too, but you're probably teaching to the choir to some extent because these folks are motivated and they're going to figure it out, right? So anyway, just some thoughts and ideas, and maybe could parking lot it because we're almost at time.
Yeah, Laura, did you want to speak to that? I noticed you nodding a lot.
No, I just, the way that curriculum is rolled out, I mean, just the rollout that you described in kindergarten, that's just one of the frustrations. And it definitely makes it harder for teachers to collaborate and share what they're doing, because they may have learned something that applied to something that they've already covered anyway. The reality of teaching is really challenging. Emily, did you want to talk about where folks are coming from real quick? Or I don't know, Katie, are we done with time? And
I think Katie had to leave us, but now Frank is the master of ceremonies. So actually we've analyzed that data, and unfortunately there isn't a huge trend of California yes or no, although we have partnered with Green Guardians to create a private cohort for them and using their network, and then to kind of co-branding in addition of the Teaching Climate Change Essentials course for them. So we're looking to start that in June. But other than like that specific recruitment from Green Guardians, we don't see a huge California versus other states. We don't see a huge red state over blue state or vice versa. And so that's what's really exciting. Some of our most engaged teachers are from really red states in red areas and really need that support. Some of our other engaged teachers are from, blue areas that have all the support in the world, and they just chose this because it was one of many options, So we don't really have trends. Like I said, we have very few international students, maybe like 4 or 5. But you're right. The one thing they have in common is that they're all motivated, except we had one teacher who from New Jersey, and she did not want to teach climate change, but she knew it was coming up. And so she took the course and we did not give great reviews. So it happens. We do have like very few, but really for the most part, these teachers are motivated. Yeah.
Emily, what did she teach?
Science. She was a science teacher. And she
What science?
I don't actually know. I could look it
She
up.
was I know she was high school, but I don't remember. What.
My experience says physics or chemistry.
Maybe.
Usually when a teacher in the science department comes from that perspective, that is almost always a physics or chemistry. I don't understand what that is, but I've had that before, and that's usually where that comes from.
Yeah.
We do just from a timeliness perspective, I think we've wrapped up. Is there any other last questions? I don't see any hands. So Emily and Laura, thank you so very much. This is recorded, right? Not that many people can meet this time at 1 o'clock Eastern on a Tuesday, but this is recorded. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, was that in your slides on how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, there's a general email, but I'll put, Laura, do you want to put your Presidio email in chat? Reach out for anything. If you have anything to promote, we're so happy to do that. If you want to continue a conversation anyway, thanks so much for the opportunity. We're really grateful and we look forward to future work with all of you.
Well, that's what the Clean Network's all about, is exactly this. And then I'm so happy that you're in contact with Subject Climate. They're adding more promotion of other people's professional development, especially within the New Jersey context. So I would just keep that active conversation. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Emily, for all the amazing work. Glad to see it's coming full circle.
Absolutely.
Thank you, y'all.
Nice way to represent California too. Look at all of us. Hi, you guys, Jim.
I
Chase.
know, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a competition, huh?
Yeah, Laura's in Texas.
I'm the lone Texan here, I think.
Well, that's great.
Hey, Texas is doing some amazing work these days, just in pockets.
Yes,
But
it's
that's how it
definitely
starts.
pockets and a very big state.
I know we're all working together, and wherever us in California can help, we're glad to help. So the competition is against climate change.
Oh.
Right.
I know you meant well by that.
Oh,
Frank.
I love that.
I'm just responding.
Thanks, Jim. Be well all, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.